All right, welcome to Book Club. I'm Dylan, here with my brother from another mother, who hopefully wouldn't murder me with an axe. Keith, what's up, buddy?
Probably more of a knife guy. Maybe a gun. It probably wouldn't be that personal.
Well, here at the Buddy Book Club, we're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing North Woods by Daniel Mason, which was published in 2023, so another fairly recent one. Back-to-back recent books. Good for us. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us in past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or sign into our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, so please download. Give us a review. 5 stars would be nice. And if you hate it, give us the 5 stars and just say you hate it in the comments. If nothing else. Give us a follow on social channels, please, and thanks. Keith! 4.18 on Goodreads is North Woods. And after almost 100 episodes, I think this is our first foray into potential Pulitzer Prize winning novels. How are you feeling about getting into the erudite discussion about literature?
Yeah, this is what you would call beautiful prose. Yeah. And you make jokes about me not understanding things and not knowing a lot. And sometimes that's true, but this time I'm not exaggerating it anyway when I'm saying this was well above my pay grade.
If it makes you feel any better, I did listen to an NPR interview, I think it was NPR, with the author, like a long format. I think it was like an hour-long interview. She was asking him all these deep questions about the book, and he was like, I don't know. Like, I just wrote the book. You know? The host, at one point, she asked him about Alice and Mary. Yeah, so they're like stand-ins for the apple trees themselves, right? And he was like, huh? She was like, when she cuts her down, it's like they're cutting down the apple tree. And he was like, yeah, you know, I mean, it is like, yeah, she was cutting down the apple trees and then she kills her. So, yeah, sure. Anywho, Keith, I got a book report for you. Can I stand up in front of the class and share it?
Please do. And enunciate so everyone in the back of the class can hear.
Enunciate.
What did I say?
Enunciate.
Announce. Eate. You think it's enunciate? What are you, an idiot?
Enunciate. The New York Times said North Woods is almost impossible to summarize. Well, if that's the case, call me Tom Cruise and strap me into a motorcycle because I'm on an impossible mission. North Woods is a tale told in a series of vignettes of a house in western part of Massachusetts from the time its first piece of stone foundation was laid up through its destruction 400 years later. Over that time, we learn of the different inhabitants and the changing flora of a quiet rural cottage. But mostly the book is about ghosts, apples, and Beatles fucking. Not quite so impossible as you thought, New York Times.
Quick to the point, I liked it. I mean, you summarized it about as good as you can get. I'm going to give you, without any Austin Powers in there, I'm going to give you a B-.
Oh, shoot. The book is about ghosts, apples, and Randy Beatles fucking. Do I make you Randy Beatles? Let's get into some stock up, stock down for North Woods. Keith, stock up. What do you got?
Stock up. Apples over everything.
Oh.
Or should I say, apple orchards before being nurtured. Honey crisps before a lover's kiss. Pink ladies before pink ladies. Apple pies before warm thighs. Fuji apples before shooting spackle. Apple cores before dirty whore. Shall I go on, D-Man?
Wow, what is this? Talk about prose.
That was kind of a major theme here, right? The apples, especially with Mary and Alice and Johnny Appleseed guy.
Osgood.
This book did have a lot of sexual innuendos or just straight sexual stuff, which was a little bit uncomfortable, especially the Beatles thing that you already alluded to. If you have something that you love and you're about, then you can't let women or men get in the way of that. You need to focus completely on that, and if someone goes against that, then you put an axe in their back or in their stomach or however you want to do. That's, I think, what we learned here. I actually have one more for you. Mary picked up the mantle and she added into the mix axe inside her before allowing apple cider.
Yeah, that one's just crumple that one up, toss in the basket. The rest of them were great.
Did you know they're pink lady apples? I didn't even know that was
I did. What's your favorite type of apple?
I never really know the difference, but I've been getting apples recently, and this book probably is the biggest marketing for it, but I've been going Honey Crisps.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Before a lover's kiss, so that's the key there. What do you go with?
Well, I have a an unfortunate allergy to apples.
Oh, that's right. The skins.
Well, it's not the skin. The skins definitely make it worse, I feel like. But, you just get
Remember I used to eat all your skins.
Yeah, that was great. I'd trim the trim the apple and then you'd eat it. That was great. We got
so you were allergic to them without that? So you just battled through it?
Yeah, you just fight through it because apples are so good.
Wow,
so, I mean, they just make my mouth itchy for a little bit. It's not gonna kill me. Usually the wife loves apples, so I'll cut her up some apples with peanut butter and I'll take a couple and then I'll just go, that was a mistake. But it was delicious. A delicious mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. I go with the Honeycrisp as well, although if I'm baking anything, it's Granny Smith all the way. I was also kind of fascinated by the way that apples grow. And I appreciate that he did some research in here because Charles Osgood is searching for a local apple, just to some sort of crazy varietal that no one's had before. So I respect it. But he was talking about the grafting process, but he didn't really dive deep into it, but obviously was familiar with it. And apple trees are very interesting. Like if you want to grow kind of an apple that can't really survive in the current climate, you take whatever's growing out of the ground for an apple tree, like a little bit, and you graft, pretty much glue onto it the fruiting part of the apple that you want. And then when it grows into the apple that you want, not the original apple that was on that tree.
Like that's how you make a hybrid, or that's how...
Well, that's also how you do hybrids from my understanding. But just in general, like if you had a Granny Smith fruiting part of a tree, you could find another apple tree that's just starting out and like chop the top off, pretty much like tape the Granny Smith part to it, and it'll grow into a Granny Smith tree. Yeah. You know what's also interesting? My first stock up, which is doctors. Stock up doctors. What can these folks not do? So I don't know how much you looked into Daniel Mason here, but he's not only the author of this book, but he's a practicing psychiatrist and teaches literature at Stanford. He only writes on the side.
Let's be nice.
This is like Herman Melville or something. It's poetic. The prose, like you talked about, it's like... I don't even know how someone could come up with this stuff. And this is his side gig. Just before this, and we may have talked about it on the pod, I don't know. I was reading this other book called Outlive. I try to do a couple of like quote unquote self-help books a year. This one's just about how to live longer and live healthier for long.
Outlive your enemies. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But not just have a longer health span is what it's called. Not just lifespan. But so be able to play sports until you're older and all that stuff. And the guy who wrote it is a doctor, Peter Attia, and he talks about all this stuff you have to do. And this is kind of the thing for all of these books, where I just wonder how these people find all the hours in the day, because also an important part of the book is sleep. Like you have to sleep 8 hours. So I'm doing the math. I'm like, all right, that gives me 16 hours. What do I do with this? And he's talking about all these different exercises you have to do and meditations, and then also pay attention to your kids and work your full-time job. I'm like, maybe if you're a doctor, you can do this, but I, as a simpleton, cannot. So I do not know how Daniel Mason was able to put this Pulitzer Prize nominee together as he's doing his full-time job and also teaching on the side, but good for him.
You ever edited or looked at a paper of a classmate that was like just top of the class, go off and become some mathematician, but you read their papers and you're like, oh, they also just could be an English person. Like it's not like that they're only good at one thing. They're just brilliant. So it's not surprising that they're also can be a writer if they wanted. They could be so it's just they're just smart people in the world, and it's humbling. And the actual word.
Oh, and the actual meaning of the word. Got it. Well, if you say something nice to me, I'll feel humble. Thank you. What else do you have for stock up?
Buddy love letters, stock up.
Oh, you talk about those letters that I sent you last week?
I wrote this note before it was revealed that the painter and poet were exchanging love letters. They're obviously gay, but to be fair, right when this started, I was like, there's no way these two guys are not gay, because there's no way you'd write this eloquently and like over the top friendly to just a random dude. And there's an issue with that. Why do I think that immediately? I'd love to have some buddy letters back and forth, or just hyping people up, gassing people up. I don't know why that's frowned upon, but back in the day, I think it wasn't as frowned upon, and that's why they could kind of initially get away with this. But I want to bring this back. And what actually happened when I was working with you, and we used to have on Fridays, we'd have friends like email chains, just like gassing everyone up. It'd be like, big weekend today, weekend coming up, boys. Like, what's everyone doing? And it was like, it's the thing I looked forward to most. And then on Mondays, there would be recaps of like what happened over the weekend and funny stories. And you just have these email chains, and it was just love letters for buddies. We need to bring those back. I don't know what happened to them. I guess people had kids and got married, but still, it was that was my favorite part of the day. I mean, I didn't work, so.
Okay, so I got a couple of thoughts here.
Okay.
One is this idea supposedly came to him because he was reading letters that have come up between Nathaniel Hawthorne and Melville.
Yeah, I don't know who Melville is, by the way.
Herman Melville.
Herman Moore, the Detroit Lions receiver?
He wrote Moby Dick.
Okay, fair enough.
So there were letters between them that were, I wouldn't say salacious, but there was some parts that could be considered of a sexual nature. So there was ideas that they might have been in some sort of love affair. So that was point one, just for history and context.
Yeah.
And then additionally, I saw this other thing on Reddit about these guys who send video messages to their group. So it's like a group like our group would be, like the 2Ps boys. And every Wednesday they send video messages to the group, basically what's going on with their life, what happened that week. And they send them all, and then their buddies gas them up. You know what I mean? Each person gasses the other people up, and it starts a conversation, and then goes into next Wednesday until they send another video. So in terms of like I'm not gonna say bromance, because it's really a man-mance. It's just a mance. It was nice. It seemed like something that I was like, wow, this would be great to do. That I just obviously never started. And if that did happen, I would start to fret every Wednesday. I'd be like, shit, I didn't do anything this week. Like, what am I going to share with the boys? Like, I don't know.
I do think if you were like, you're talking about the gardening stuff you're doing, if you were like, boys, progress in the garden, let's go, and you just did a video of that and it was 30 seconds, I think everyone would appreciate that, honestly.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe, sure, all the trees I cut down last week would have been something.
Nothing gets people more jazzed up than a before and after. It doesn't really matter what it is.
My next stock up is a little ode to Will Ferrell in Boy, That Escalated Quickly is the stock up. So after the redcoat trader loyalist Charles Osgood dies, we get this nice story of his daughters supporting one another in the care for the house, the property, and one another. That is until Mary one day just decides to go and axe Alice in half. And I just wanted to say to Mary, really, that I think the message was clear after you chopped down all of your father's beloved apple trees. Alice was going to get the message. Keep it in the family. Don't go with any guys, whatever the case is. But also, if you loved your sister so much that you were willing to sleep next to her decomposing corpse for 10 years, maybe don't brutally murder her. It didn't seem right, Mary. Alice didn't deserve that. The trees didn't deserve it. Your father didn't deserve that desecration to his land and his family. So something was going on with Mary between the years.
I needed a little more background. Were they actually identical twins, or they...
Yeah, they were identical twins, but Alice was a little bit better good looking than
right. It didn't make any sense that people would be like, "Oh my God, Alice is like stop you in the street, good looking," and then they're like, "And then she's identical to this girl," and they're like, "Gross, get her out of here." It's like, what? How does that work?
Well, it's interesting because my sister had a couple of twins, a pair of twins, if you will,
here we go.
who were twins, Basil, that she was best friends with one of them. And they were identical twins. If you saw them from afar, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. But when you got close, one was substantially better looking than the other. So I can kind of understand this idea because of that experience, that one daughter would kind of know that she was uglier, and also the fact that she's not getting courted as much. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder, people, and conventional beauty, it doesn't really matter so much. Like, just marry. The reason why people don't come and knock on your door is because they can see that deep inside of you, you're an axe murderer. You have that in you. You have that demon in your eye. It has nothing to do with the way you look. Like, put yourself out there. Alice wants to go out in the town and talk to people and do this or do that. And Mary's like, no, let's just stay in this orchard and live our lives together. It has nothing to do with beauty. It has all the things to do with your personality, which is terrible.
Well, the problem is that it's a small town and you don't have the ability to go outside that, the town only sees them too, and it's like going up and looking at like two cars, and it's like, here's like the convertible top down fucking money car, and here's the Toyota Prius like next to it, and it's like,
great. Some people don't like to guzzle gas.
If you're gonna only compare these two things, but if you bring that Toyota Prius to another town, and now all of a sudden becomes, oh great, like look at this, the Toyota Prius is awesome now. But the fact of the matter is that if you were to go after Mary and you think there's this distinct difference between them, then you just feel like you're settling for the lesser of the cars. Maybe the better comparison is like, you know how like cars have different levels, like there's like the luxury level, but it's the same car.
You're saying Mary's cloth seats, no sunroof.
Yeah, you're gonna tape cassette and cloth seats rather than the fully tricked out stereo system and leather seats. And you're just like, oh, I could have had those this whole time.
I do need heated seats, so that's a good point. Yeah. My last one is just post and beam houses, because that's what the cottage on the orchard is, and the house that we see throughout these 400 years is a post and beam house, and a salt box as well, and I myself do own a post and beam salt box house. So just got to toot my own horn there, humbled myself.
I'm looking at what that means, but nice. Yeah, totally.
And you've been to my house. There's
yeah, but I don't know what's different between
posts and beams.
That and a normal house. It's just like a New England house, then, I would say, right?
No, it's got posts and beams.
Doesn't every house have posts and beams?
No, they have 2x4s and not posts and beams. I mean,
aren't they made of posts? 2x4s?
I think the post and beam is the exposed beams.
Okay, exposed beams.
And the exposed posts that make up the structure of the house, although there are 2x4s in between to create the walls.
Oh, okay. Kids have been watching This Old House a lot, huh? Haven't you?
I've just been watching the Magnolia channel with Joanna Gaines.
I don't know what that is. All right.
Yes, you do. Chip and Joanna, come on. All right, I'm just going to go right into my stock down, because the stock down is cock blockery, which is back to our story about Mary. And there's 11 other stories here, but
the one that sticks out the most is definitely that one.
Mary's got to chill. You're not conjoined twins. Let Alice meet a man if she wants to. What's the problem if she meets a guy and she brings him into the house, like you're still together, they start a family, and now you're like a kick-ass aunt helping out around the place. It's weird that you want to just be this spinster with your sister and age and only be friends with each other. It's a little weird. So chill. So chill.
Agreed.
I won't talk about that story. I won't talk about that story anymore. That was it.
Well, I'm going to bring it right back up, because my next stock down is ambiguous ghosts. Was it just me, or was the ghost things confusing to you?
The ghosts?
It didn't seem to have any laws or rules or what was going on there. Give me Casper, the friendly ghost. Give me someone that's not ambiguous. I need to understand what the rules are in this ghost world that exists.
When you die, you can become a ghost, or you sometimes
become a ghost. Haunting only certain people. They like can communicate, or they can hear them in certain people. And then the slave catcher that goes to the house,
Phelan?
Does he get killed by the ghost? That was so confusing to me, and they never brought it back up.
The Phelan story almost reminded me of like a scary stories to tell in the dark, because it ends with him basically going in and seeing Mary and Alice, right, under the floor. Mm-hmm. And then it just like fades to black or cuts. So you don't know what happens. It's just like a fun, weird story. And I'm glad he got his comeuppance, because the only bounty hunter I respect is Boba Fett.
Yeah, and Django, but yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. How dare I? Yes, Django and Boba Fett, of course. At first I was like, Django Fett? I thought his son's name was something else, but isn't his son's name also like Django Fett, though?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Django Unchained.
Yeah, who's also a bounty hunter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no.
Interesting.
What a crossover there. Nicely done. All right.
Yeah, humbled. You feel humbled.
Humbled with that.
I didn't think the ghosts were that ambiguous. Like, when you die, they become ghosts and they live on the property. It's like that show that Caroline watches on CBS.
Only certain people could see them, though. A bunch of people lived on the property and no one else noticed them.
I think we get a little bit more at the end with Nora, when Nora becomes a ghost and says all the things that she's doing as a ghost. And it seems like they can do absolutely nothing. Like when they turned the house into a wedding venue or whatever the case was, or they were going to destroy the house or destroy the orchards or something. And she was like, oh, so me and Charles Osgood went out, grabbed a deer and brought a deer into the wedding room, into the bridal suite, and then they stopped doing that. You can remain unseen if you want to, or you can be seen. The problem is what you were talking about is when they showed themselves to Robert, and then they like diagnosed him with schizophrenia. And was he schizophrenic?
Wait, the mom. There's also the mom or the wife that was same thing, right?
Yeah, the wife of the lodge owner.
It's very confusing.
The wife of the lodge owner who heard the two men having coital, and she couldn't say sodomy, so she had to say something else that was funny.
Yeah, rhymes with sodomy. I was like, huh? What? I said rhyme with sodomy. It was the same word.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, maybe they were into some voyeuristic stuff and they wanted her to hear, or maybe when
you're saying a lot of maybes. This is my whole point.
Yeah, well, that's the best part is we don't know about the other side. We don't know about it.
Give me a little Casper. Give me a little Harry Potter ghost. Give me something.
What are the rules with Casper? Devon Sawa dies and he becomes
I don't
Casper?
know. I've been called that a lot, but whatever.
Just because of your translucent skin?
Yeah, that's right. Don't worry about that.
I respect it. All right, my stock down, and I hate to do it. I really do. But stock down Sir David Attenborough. It pains me to say that such an important man to planet Earth. But after a lifetime of guiding us through the wonders of nature, he hasn't come close to the majesty of the play-by-play we get from Daniel Mason on Beetlefuckery. I don't know how deeply you read that chapter or listened to it, presumably if you listened to the audiobook, but there was like some real beetle coitus happening over several pages.
You know when you look up grimace GIFs? That was my expression for that whole chapter. I was like, wait, are they talking about actual beetles here?
Wait, when you mean grimace, do you mean the purple thing from the McDonald's?
No, I mean grimacing.
Oh, gotcha.
And I also looked like that because I was embarrassed. I was purple, so either way.
So you were grimacing at the explanation of the Beatles stuff.
Any time we've read a book that has any sort of intercourse in it, I'm always like, this makes me uncomfortable. And this was just like, oh, this makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on with this Beatles stuff.
So are you saying that this Beatles stuff made you more uncomfortable than 50 Shades?
50 Shades. All right. At least I can, picture this. The Beatles stuff, they're like, and then the Beetle thrust. It's hard. I'm like, oh, all right. What the hell?
He used a word for the Beetle penis that I don't remember. But if you thought that was uncomfortable, back to that NPR interview I was talking about. It was in front of a live audience. It wasn't just like in a studio. And at the beginning, he says that his mother-in-law is in the audience. Like she came to listen to the chat. And the host has the gall to not only bring up the Beatles sex scene, but to hand him her book and have him read 2 paragraphs of the Beatles having sex in front of his own mother-in-law.
Yeah, that's a hard pass.
So I was like, wow, whoever this NPR host is, like, that's...
It was just also hard to imagine Paul McCartney and John Lennon like that, So that was the biggest, all right, I'll be here all week. Here we go.
What else you ever stocked down?
Not having a bookmark stocked down. I did read the audiobook for this, and by read I mean listen. And honestly, I've never used bookmarks. It's never been something I've ever used. I just don't know why, but I just never do it. But this book, after listening to it, I would need a bookmark. I would put it down for 15 minutes, come back, and start listening again. And I'm like, where am I? Who am I? What's going on? I'd have to back it up 5 minutes to repeat. There was so much change going on constantly, and then the narrative wasn't exactly right to the point. There'd be points where it was just like, wait, what person is this? And where is it going on? And it's then it references something from 4 stories ago. Mm-hmm. It was way, way over my head. I really, really needed a previously on Alias or Lost or Lois and Clark. Mm-hmm. I needed one of those so I could just get back into it. This is like watching a TV show back in the day, and then 2 weeks later you pick it back up and you're like, what did I just watch? But 1,000 times harder to remember. And it would be 15 minutes difference and I would forget.
Yeah, I would suggest for those that haven't listened to it yet, and if you are read it, and if you're listening to us and you haven't read it, I apologize. Alice dies to Mary's axe. But to stop at the end of chapters, or specifically the end of a storyline of a chapter, because it's hard to in the middle, especially because it's interposed with these articles or letters or whatnot. And sometimes that letter will go first and then the story will come after that. So you don't even know who the characters are really and you read this whole letter, and then the story kind of fills you in to what was actually happening in that letter.
And once you got comfortable with certain characters, they're like, and we'll never see them again.
I did like those totems or whatnot that came up between the stories, whether that be the axe head that they would find later. And I thought it was interesting that you'd have this axe head where Mary brutally murdered her sister with it, and then someone finds it 100 years later and is like, oh, this is a cool axe head. Like, I'll use it on the property. I just got to get a new handle for it. It's like, wow, like you don't even know that you're handling a murder weapon. Like all the memory of that, or even the Bible that was from our second story of the woman who lived in the house when she was kidnapped or whatever the case was, that's all marked up. Like that Bible ends up in Canada and then ends up in someone else's, and they don't even know the history behind the person. So I thought that was awesome, but at the same time kind of sad in the sense that these things that matter so much to us, if someone else found them down the road, it would just be a thing to them. It's funny how much we put into, we're a consumer society, so how much weight we put into things that are just our things, and to us they matter, but if to someone else they're just trash or used for something totally different.
Agreed. I would also just end with, I think this was the anti-beach book. It's like a cold, mystery, wintry beach book. You want it to be like, everything's good, very quick pace, and the characters and don't have to think a lot. Pick it back up, jump in the water, This was the opposite of that. You had to be like, have your study guide ready to go when you read this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we'll probably talk about it a little bit more when we say whether we, would recommend it or not. But I felt personally like it was a good change of pace as to all of the, talking about pace, like all the fast-paced, thriller-y type stuff or sci-fi or fantasy stuff that we read, where I totally agree with you. This is a leather chair in front of a fire, got nothing else going on. Grab a glass of brown if that's your thing. It's not mine, so I'll have a Cosmopolitan or something. And, just kind of sit there and don't feel like you need to be turning the page. Because when I'm reading a thriller, I'm like, oh, turning the page. Like, I got to keep going with the story. Where this is like, oh, kind of let that poetic wording hit you. Or not, and just move on. It's like, kind of take it slow. Mm-hmm. My next stock down is the Historical Society of Western Massachusetts. So I think the character in this chapter was about a guy named Morris. I don't remember the character's name, and I went back to listen to that chapter, but then they never said his name, and I was like, I'm listening to this book all over again. Like, I'm not ready for this. So I'm just going to go with Morris. But Morris has faced some tragedy in his life. His wife left him for another man. He called himself a cuck. So, if you're calling yourself a cuck, it's just not a good time. She eventually returned to him when she was diagnosed with cancer. Morris took her back in and cared for her until her death, and he's now a widower. Through this whole experience, he found solace in the Historical Society of Western Massachusetts, an organization of like-minded amateur archaeologists and metal detectorists, and it seems fornicators. Yeah, Morris used these meetings to woo some lonely ladies. So what? That's not grounds in my mind to kick him out. How dare you, honestly? It would be, Keith, for you, this would be like your flag football team kicking you out if you made a pass at the quarterback during a post-victory gaiety at the local watering hole.
A pass, like he passed the ball to me, or a pass? Yeah, right.
No, like you made a pass at him.
Yeah,
so
okay.
People meet each other in all different places and have all different interests in those relationships. So if these women are interested and willing and consent to sleeping with Morris, whether that's because his wife died or because he's a great amateur archaeologist, whatever the case is, it's none of the business of the Historical Society of Western Massachusetts and its leaders. I honestly think that these male leaders who kicked him out, they're jealous because okay, so you had some meetings and he's given, some winks to the ladies and then they sleep with him. He ended up finding this very interesting story about these deaths in Western Massachusetts, is doing all of the research for it, and they won't let him present to the society because they kicked him out because he had slept with a couple of the ladies. Like, give me a break. Ridiculous.
Also, I think like the best place to meet someone is one of these groups that is a social group, because you can see the person in their zone, what they're like in public, what their interests are, things like that. When you go into these clubs and things like that, you're being yourself right away. You're not having to put on your date face, you know what I mean? So you kind of get to see them.
Both people are in a comfortable environment that they want to be in. And so you totally, like you said, like you can be your authentic self and those people can take you for your authentic self or not. And it doesn't matter one way or the other. But if they're taking Morris for his authentic self, then let it happen. Let that Beatle love go down.
A lot of people, I think, would say that you go to the club and you shouldn't have to be harassed by people, all this stuff. But I don't think you're saying that, but I think that people would argue that.
Oh, no. I mean, I think that's fair. I didn't get from what...
Yeah, he didn't seem like a harasser.
I mean, he's obviously really into what this historical society does. It's not like he's going to a book club where it's one guy and a bunch of ladies and he's like, I didn't read the book, but who's coming home with me tonight? It's not
I tried that. It doesn't work.
It doesn't sound like just eating all the little hand sandwiches and the wine and, cheese and crackers.
My company does a book club that's only in the women's chat. I was like, what the fuck? I want to read books in the book club. What the hell is this? Someone told me about it. They're like, oh, we should add it to the book club. And I'm like, I'm in the book club chat. What are they talking about? They're like, oh yeah, it's only in like the women's club. Oh, cool. Like, I guess guys don't like to read. That's why we made this right here. That's why I'm angry.
But you know what? To be fair, I feel like guys in businesses and whatnot have like sports clubs and they don't invite women into it. And that did not exist where we worked together. Like, it was all inclusive. Anyone could join for both things. But I could see how there's an idea of a barrier to entry into like that kind of thing. So, if they want their own thing, fine. But at the same time, I don't think it's a good look. I think everyone should be included.
There's co-ed sport leagues. Like, that's not crazy.
100%. Like, we did that co-ed bowling league we had a team of all guys and we won.
Nice.
Nice. I was going to say favorite scene, but this definitely isn't like a scene book, but maybe we can do like a favorite storyline. So I did write down the ones I could remember, and I think I got 11. Granted, I don't know if these are the actual ones, because I think some of them weren't maybe the full story, so whatever. I might be missing some, but we got the Puritan couple who starts the house at the beginning. They're leaving Puritan colony to build a house. The female settler that gets kidnapped by the Native Americans and turned into the house. Phelan, the slave catcher or bounty hunter. The Osgoods. So you have both Charlie's story and his daughters. The painter William and his lover Erasmus. Anastasia, the phony clairvoyant. Daughter of the hunting lodge owner with her son Robert, who has the schizophrenia. The archaeology guy. I think we settled on Morris. Then there's animal stuff. So there's a panther. There's some Randy beetles. There's fungus, and this isn't an animal. Well, I guess it is.
But... Was the panther one a poem? Because I didn't
get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Because I was like, when did the panther come? I know it's the cover. I'm like, well, I don't remember this at all. What happened? I just didn't understand any of the poems. Okay. Good.
The poem, when that poem happened, and there's also a fungus poem, I think. Those two right over my head. And then the last one I could remember was the last one of the book, which is Nora's story. Which Nora's story, I feel like, is almost the theatrical version of the ghost situation where she dies in a car crash because she's swerving to
very American Gods-esque, I feel like, the ending there.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I could see that. And she doesn't realize she's dead, but meets Charles Osgood, and he gives her, kind of the lay of the land of being a ghost. And then it kind of goes for maybe another 100 years or so of the house, and then the house getting destroyed. And I think there's like a dystopian moment going on there where there's no more people around and then people come back. Lots of stuff happening. But out of those stories, which one, and I'm going to say you can't pick Mary and Alice.
Yeah, I wasn't going to. I was going to actually pick the Anastasia one.
Okay.
I actually like that one a lot, although the sexual stuff, again, I was like, I don't know, this seems weird. Was she like conning him by having sex with? I didn't have any.
No,
the sexual stuff didn't make any sense.
She's just voracious. But,
okay.
But they also, I feel like, our buddy Dr. Daniel Mason went out of his way to keep explaining how fat she was, which was a little weird.
But I did like that. I like any confidence person, like any sort of con. So yeah, I'm always a big fan of that. I actually did a blog back in the day with my top 5 cons. I got to look back
like
up.
Real life cons or movies?
Yeah, real life cons. Because there's like a whole Wikipedia page on, you could like look it up, of like confidence games, of like different ones you can do.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
The Violin, that's a classic, right? What movie is that from? It's like a guy goes in and says he's got to sell a violin, and it's like super like expensive, and then another guy comes in, he's like, let me get that violin. Have you ever seen The Sting, the movie? Robert Redford and Paul Newman?
No.
You should watch that. It's a great con movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just liked her vibes and her ultimate confidence, and then it became like The Green Mile, which I did think this is actually writing was a little bit like a lot of Stephen King feels to this to me. I don't know if that's you're feeling that, but there was a lot of like supernatural, but also tangents of stuff going on that I didn't know why there's tangents on them, but very Stephen King-esque in some instances. And it was up north, northeast.
Yeah.
So a lot of northeast references.
Enough. I did enjoy how she's the phoniest of all cons, although she was very good at her con. But
she was really good.
Yeah, she had all the tricks and literally tricks up her sleeve. But did also like how that story ended with her doing the seance and then hearing the actual ghost and be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Cut to black.
That's the Green Mile stuff I'm talking about, where like the magic stuff starts happening.
Yeah, that was another thing that was found. Later on, they found her crystal ball, and they were like, "Whoa, what the heck's a crystal ball doing here?" But can't say I remember the Green Mile. Honestly, I feel bad. I don't remember that film.
Tom Hanks has like some, I think, venereal disease, and he like sucks it out of him.
Wait.
I don't think I'm making that up. I think that's true.
Pardon me. I really liked. I mean, the Osgood story, like Charles's story, not his daughter's story. Like Charles's his lone story about the apples, I really enjoyed, and I also enjoyed William and Erasmus's story. Felt like a classic. What is it? Unrequited love or whatever the case is, where William loves him so much, Erasmus is, but they can't be together. A little bit of Shakespeare in Love. I don't know if you've seen that since we last talked, but...
What do you think happened there, by the way? So they were basically communicating, he visited, and then just went radio silent all of a sudden.
I think his wife found the letters and was basically like, you either pick us or him kind of thing. Gave him the ultimatum, and he was like, okay, I'm going to pick you. But then his wife died, because he says his wife died.
Now let me ask you something.
Yep.
You're the maid that milks them back to health there. Are you ripping up that letter also?
Me personally?
Yeah.
1,000%. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to go the other way, being like, of course not. I want to see unbridled love.
No. I
love the honesty.
Yeah. I'd be like, I love this guy now. He's only got so much more to live. What am I going to take care of 2 old guys who are loving each other?
Yeah.
And now this is on me? Like, no, I didn't sign up for that.
I'm not ripping it up. I'm basically tripping and falling and throwing into the fire. Oh, what happened to that letter? That's crazy. It's one of those things where I'm like tricking myself into thinking I didn't read it and then throwing it into the fire.
Yeah, because you do have to live with the fact that you're a total piece of shit afterwards.
Yeah, of course.
Because, she's a terrible person. Like, this is the love of his life. He almost killed himself over this man, and now he wants to get together with him, and you're throwing it out. So, yeah.
What a great answer. I'm glad I asked that.
So I like that story too. And then, that was about it. I thought the Morra story was pretty good. They were all good except for some of the poem stuff in there and the songs I wasn't really into. Let's go to a quick love-hate. What'd you love?
When I actually get into the story and I got my bearings, I think the stories were captivating and they're interesting. I think they're all original. He wrote different variations of different characters, good and bad. I thought it was really, really cool, and I did think it's kind of like Cloud Atlas. I've referenced that book a few times, but it's similar where they have like all these different stories and different points of view. Yeah. That book was very hard to read also, so... But yeah, it was very similar. Reminded me of that in that sense.
I didn't read that book. I started the movie, and I'm one of those people that like, you start a movie, you have to finish it. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no rules. I watched like 20 minutes of that movie. I was like, I'm out. Like, no, thank you. I am out.
I think I've told you before, but the movie I thought was 100 times better than the book. So just imagine.
Oh, okay.
Well, I also know the payoff that's coming in the movie, so it's like, okay, I'll stick around because I know they're jumping, but I know they're going to come back and they're going to finish the stories.
What I loved is it's a novel idea, pun totally intended, but we're talking 12 chapters, 12 different perspectives and time periods, 12 months in the North Woods, And more impressive is it's 12 different writing styles. Like he writes as different people in different ways going through time. I don't know when they say that baseball player is a 5-tool player. I'd have no idea what that means. You probably do. But he's doing 5-tool playing of literature. Like he can do it all. So I thought that was something I've never seen before in a book. And that fact alone, I was impressed by.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I got lost in what is the 5-tool player. I think it's hitting for power, running, fielding, and throwing. I think those are the 5 tools.
How do you measure throwing? Like,
or if you have a good arm.
Oh, got you. So it's not like there's no stats behind it. Just like, oh, that guy can do it all. What else you love?
This might not be a love, really, but I thought it was good to do an audiobook for this because I wouldn't have finished this as a physical book. I feel like my rate of zone out audiobook-wise is very low. It's a low rate. Reading-wise, I like the reason I don't love reading is because I like zone out. I like will read a paragraph. I read ridiculously slow, and then I don't know what I read, and then I'll have to go back.
Yeah.
Where this was, I thought I did that a lot, and it was an audiobook, so good as an audiobook. Let's put it that way. I don't know if that's more of a love-hate there. But
no, I get what you're saying, and especially for me where I'm mostly listening to this while I'm walking the dog or toiling in the yard or putting away groceries, whatever the case is. Those things are mindless, so I can do those things, and then also I'm focusing on the book. So it helps with the focus on the book because I'm not just sitting there reading it being like letting my thoughts wander to something else, because like sometimes you're reading it and you like read 10 pages and you're like, what did I read? I have no idea.
Right. Yep.
My last love is I just thought it was fun to experience real literature. We don't do that a lot here, and I'm okay with that. I like all the books we read, and I like kind of our wheelhouse that we stick with, but this was a fun kind of deviation from that. It felt like I was listening to 11 hours of poetry that I could mostly understand. If someone said, hey, read this Shakespeare play or whatever the case was, I'd be like, I don't know what any of this stuff means. It sounds beautiful, but I don't know what that means. This was like, it sounds beautiful, and I think I know what it means. And a lot of times I was just stopping, like there'd be a great paragraph of stuff he would say, and I was like, how does someone come up with a book of this? Like I couldn't even imagine coming up with a paragraph, something that's this beautifully written.
If I came up with one of these ideas, I'd be like, I'm a genius. I'm going to write a whole book on it. And he was like, I'll just cut it in 1/12.
Yeah, like my mom was big into Thoreau growing up. And maybe that's just because, we grew up in that area. Well, my grandfather was as well. But whatever the case is, she would have that book around. And like sometimes you'd poke in and you'd start reading some of it. And it was like, I don't understand anything that's going on, but it's beautiful about nature. Like I understand that this is beautiful about nature. So this felt a little bit like that, but then in a storier form. Yeah, it's like Walden Pond, I guess. What about hates?
Hate for me, it was kind of forgettable. I told you I had to look up the plot after because I was like, what happened again? That's never a good thing to be necessarily, but I think it's more because it's a lot in a lot of characters and a lot of different stories that when you listed out everything, I remember all of them. Like, oh yeah, but I would have not been able to go through like you just did and name all 12. There was a lot of tangent stuff. I already mentioned this, but I feel like in this type of story, you kind of need to stick in the fucking lane. You can't be telling me about how Mary and Alice went off and talked to a Native American for 10 minutes. And I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, if you're going to give me this character for 30 minutes of the book, I need you to lock in and tell me what's going on with this story, Whereas, like, there's definitely some stuff that was rambling. It seemed like that I was well outside the range of... And maybe that's supposed to build the character, but I didn't pick up much from those things.
No, I think that's a criticism that other people have had just from what I've read on like criticisms of the book in general. So yeah, just like that the characters weren't necessarily like fleshed out, then they happen so quickly and they kind of move on to something else. But for me, my only real hate is it's a bit too creative and smart for me.
Yeah.
It's like I was, in the waiting room at a dentist and some snot-nosed kid already took the highlights magazine that I was eyeing. And, the only...
You read New Yorker?
Exactly.
Or the Wall Street Journal?
Exactly. The only thing that was left was the New Yorker. And I'd pick it up and read it, sure. But will I understand all the big words? Unlikely. I almost had sometimes felt bad reading it because I couldn't give it the level of respect that I'm sure it deserved. Yeah. It'd be like sitting down at a 3 Michelin star restaurant, but I'd burnt my tongue on coffee that morning, so I couldn't taste anything. And they're explaining to me all these amazing dishes that's taken them all day to create. And I'm like, I can't taste any of this
What
stuff.
you're saying is my brain is a permanently burnt tongue. Is that what you're saying?
Our brain.
Okay.
But yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. So, I didn't hate it necessarily. It's just like I'm just not that literature.
100% agreed.
It was, and I did read Moby Dick over the last 2 years because I read it and then I put it down and I picked it up again. And it did feel a lot like that, where I understood the story that was going on in the background, but then there's these long chapters that are explaining stuff, and it's beautifully explaining whaling and whales. But I was like, what are these words? I don't even know. You have any lingering questions?
I do not.
I have one, and it's just, Do you believe in ghosts?
I think if I'm in a situation of this type of place where you're in like a log cabin out in the woods, then yes. I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to say yes. But if I'm in this situation, I would say yes. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Like, if you were in a cabin in the woods, you'd be freaked out a little bit. Like, creeks and stuff would freak you out. And it wouldn't be people. It'd be
right.
ether. Yeah. I think that's totally fair. I agree with you. All those ghost shows when they go into these crazy places, those are all fake. But would I do that on my own? Absolutely not. Supposedly my, house I grew up in is haunted, quote unquote. Other people have had ghost experiences. And I thought I had over the years as a child. But looking back, I think I can explain them rationally. But at the time, they were scary. I'm kind of with you. I don't not believe, but I would be scared in that situation.
It's like when you go to the zoo, it's hard to believe that a giraffe exists. And then you see it and you're like, oh, shit, okay, I guess this does exist. It's one of those things. So once you're in the setting, you get it.
Yeah, if we didn't have zoo books as a kid and I had never heard of a giraffe and someone around a campfire was explaining to me about this mythical animal called a giraffe, I would say that's bullshit.
Its neck is 10 feet long.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, right.
But has 7 vertebrae.
It's
like, how does that make any sense? Northwoods, Daniel Mason, Dr. Daniel Mason. What do we think? Would you recommend it?
Not for me. There's definitely books we've read here that I would get on my pedestal and be like, this book is terrible. I hated it. Well, this book is like, it's above anything that I could read. It's above my pay grade. I've read other books that are, I would say, beautiful prose, and I think that had a little bit better stories in this. But this is just not my book. I don't want to bash it because, again, I don't understand it that well. So it's hard for me to criticize it.
Yeah, I feel like this must be high up on the recent book club books. I would not recommend it to most people I know. I think, like my mom, for example, is in a book club. I just talked to her before this. She said, what have you read? She actually is reading, what's the Kvothe book? The Name of the Wind.
Oh, really? That's a book club book?
No, it's not. I was like, is this for a book club? She was like, no, it's my accountant recommended it to me. It's like, oh, okay. She says it's favorite book. I was like, pretty cool accountant. Yeah, granted, the rest of them kind of suck. She was like, oh, I'm reading this. And, I suggested this book for her book club. Because, it was up for a Pulitzer Prize.
Actually is up for a Pulitzer? I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Well, I don't think it won, but it was a finalist. Wow. And she's got this ladies book club. So I think it'd be good for that, where they like literature. They want to read literature. They want to read all sorts of stuff.
They like prose.
But I think this is something that if you suggested, could be good for that kind of format. My buddy who suggested to me is a teacher. He's an English teacher, so that checks out. I liked it. I'm glad I read it. It was a nice change of pace. But do I want to get back to sci-fi and fantasy and thrillery type stuff? Yeah, I think I'm ready for that. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I wouldn't bash it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Speaking about all the things that are in our wheelhouse, what do we have coming up next?
The Righteous Arrow by Brian J. Morra. This is a new book that is coming out. It comes out April 16th.
Righteous Arrow. And we're doing an interview with it.
Yep.
Sweet. So if you guys want to check in for Righteous Arrow, you can now get yourself a copy. So order yourself wherever you get your book. Check us out next week for that. Otherwise, Keith, this was North Woods, and it was fun to talk to you about it. I actually think we got a lot more content out of this than I expected.
Yeah. I had no notes at first, so I'm glad we were able to get some stuff.
Well, good talking to you, buddy. All right. Bye now.
Bye now.